They tell this story a little different every time, depending on who's doing the telling. Some of the details drift. The name of the plantation changes. The year slides around. But every version, every single one, begins the same way. It begins with a melody. A woman humming to her baby in the dark of a slave cabin. Low and slow, a tune with no words to it. Older than that plantation. Older than this whole country. Carried across an ocean in the one piece of baggage they could never take from her. Her own memory. She hummed it to her son every night of his childhood, and that melody sank down into the boy so deep that it became part of how his heart kept time. His name, the ones who keep the story say, was Isaiah. And this is the story of how he got caught playing the master's piano, and what that melody cost, and what it could not be made to cost, no matter how hard they tried. The gift and the pride that came with it. Isaiah was different, and everybody said so, and not always kind about it. He'd been born with the whole of music already inside him. His mother's melody was always trying to get out of him. He hummed it in the field, tapped it on the fence rail, on the side of the water bucket, on his own knee while he worked. But it wasn't the gift that the old folks remembered most when they told it. It was the way he carried himself. He had a confidence that made no sense at all for a man in his position. A straight back and a look in the eye he was supposed to keep lowered and simply never did. Arrogant, the old ones called him. Like somewhere down inside, Isaiah just did not believe that any man alive, master or otherwise, had the right to tell him what he was. His own people warned him about it. Isaiah, lower your eyes, boy. That pride is going to get you killed. He'd only smile at them. Because Isaiah had decided somewhere so deep he couldn't have named it, that he was not going to live small. Not even here, not even in this. And for a while, for one bright, impossible while, it looked like the world was going to let him get away with it. The day he sat down at the piano. Now, the master had a piano, a grand thing shipped from a long way off, sitting in the front room of the big house mostly for show. The daughter who used to pick at it had been sent away to boarding school, and nobody left in that house could really play. So it sat there like fine furniture gathering quiet, and Isaiah, carrying firewood past that room day after day, would hear it in his head. Not the silence of it, but what it could be. What his mother's melody would sound like if it were poured through all those keys at once. One day, and the tellers always slow down right here, Isaiah did the thing no slave was ever, under any circumstance, supposed to do. He walked into that front room uninvited, in the broad middle of the day, and he sat down at the master's piano, and he laid his hands on the keys, and he played. He didn't sneak, that's the part folks can never get over. He didn't do it in the dark, trembling the way you'd expect a man to. He did it in daylight, in the master's own house, calm as anything, like that piano had been sitting there waiting on him, and he had finally come to collect it. That was Isaiah, all the way through, and the whole house went still. The cook stopped, the house girls stopped. Somebody took off running to fetch the master, certain there was about to be blood on the floor. What the master did next. The master came in fast and furious, ready to have this bold fool dragged out back and whipped down to the bone. And then he crossed the doorway, and he heard it. And he stopped where he stood, because coming up out of that piano, out of the hands of a field slave who had never had a lesson in his life, who could not read a note, was the most beautiful thing the master had ever heard inside his own house. Finer than anything the paid tutors had ever pulled out of his own daughter. Finer than the recitals he'd sat through in the city in his good stiff coat, pretending to feel something. This was the real thing. This was what all that money had only ever been reaching toward. And the master, for all that he was, and he was plenty, stood there in the doorway and could not make himself stop it. This is the first turn nobody sees coming. He didn't punish Isaiah. He didn't sell him. He gave him the piano, a slave who lived like a king. Everything changed after that, and it changed fast. The master could not get enough of it. He had Isaiah play in the mornings, and play in the evenings, and play deep into the night. He moved him clean out of the quarters and into the big house, gave him a room of his own, gave him fine clothes, took him off the fields for good, because those hands were far too valuable now to be dragging cotton. And he showed him off. The master brought men from all over the county, from counties away, and sat them down in that front room with their brandy and their cigars to hear the slave who played like the sky had cracked open. Isaiah would play the mother's melody, and 100 beautiful things built up off of it, easy, his eyes half closed, and grown men who owned other human beings sat there and went misty and could not have told you why. And Isaiah, Lord, Isaiah loved it. He walked through that house like he owned the deed to it, had the run of the place, ate well, slept in a real bed under a real roof. And the pride they'd all warned him about only grew, because now it looked like the pride had been right all along, like the world had finally admitted the thing he'd always secretly known about himself. He'd beaten it. A slave, and he'd beaten it, with nothing in his hands but the song his mother hummed him in the dark. And that right there was his one mistake. Not the playing, the forgetting. He'd started to believe the house was truly his, that the rules that held down every other soul on that land had somehow, for him, been lifted. They had not been. They had only been waiting. The daughter came home. Then the master's daughter came back from boarding school. She'd been a small girl when she left. She came home a young woman, a stranger to the place and to Isaiah, and he a stranger to her. And Isaiah, who by now had forgotten, all the way down to the root, that there was any line left on this earth he wasn't allowed to cross, did not lower his eyes to her the way he was meant to. He spoke to her the way a man speaks to a woman, like an equal, like the rules simply did not apply to him, because so far they never had. And she was young, and far from any world that would have taught her to say no, and she found herself drawn to the one person on that whole plantation who moved through it like he was already free. So she listened. The story goes quiet here. It always goes quiet right here, and I'll keep it quiet too. Only this much. By the time the season turned, the master's daughter was carrying a child. And there was no version of that world, not one, anywhere, in which such a thing could be forgiven. What that world demanded. Whatever love the master had held for the music, it was nothing at all beside what his world demanded of him now. The same men who had come to marvel at Isaiah came back for something else entirely. And the same world that had let a slave live like a king for the length of one beautiful song made very sure now that he understood it had only ever been lending. That the piano, the room, the fine clothes, the pride, none of it had ever once belonged to him. That his gift had never made him free, it had only made him useful. And useful is a thing that ends. And to make certain that Isaiah, and every other soul watching on that land, never forgot again exactly where a man like him stood in the order of things, the master took from him the one thing that had lifted him up above his place. He took his hands. I won't dress that up, and I won't sit inside it. They took the hands that had played the mother's melody. The house went silent. The piano sat closed and gathering dust. And the hard, terrible truth of this whole story came down like a blade. It does not matter how gifted you are, how talented, how touched by heaven you were born. If you do not know your place in the world you are actually standing in, that world will remind you, and it will not be gentle about it. Talent was never the same thing as freedom. Isaiah had let himself confuse the two, and it cost him everything his hands could hold, what they could not cut off. And here is where the story stops being only a sorrow and starts becoming a legend. Because they took his hands, but they could not touch the melody. It had never been in his hands, not once. It had been put in him by his mother, in the dark, before he could even speak, sunk down into the place where his heart kept its time. And there is no blade made for that place. No master ever born could reach it. So, the legend says, Isaiah taught himself to play again, with his feet. Cast out, broken, of no more use to anyone who'd owned him, he found his way to a keyboard however he could, and he bent his whole body down over it, and slow and clumsy, and then somehow not clumsy at all, he played his mother's melody with his feet. They say it took him years. They say the first time he carried it clean all the way through, the people who heard it wept and could not make themselves stop. He became a wonder of a different kind after that, not a caged marvel in a rich man's parlor anymore, something freer and stranger than that. A man with no hands who made music anyway, drifting along the edges of that world, and the story of him traveled a great deal further than his playing ever could have from inside that house. The melody went everywhere, out to the fields, down to the river, to other plantations, other counties, humming up out of people who couldn't have told you where they'd first heard it. They took his hands to prove the world was theirs, and all they truly did was set the song loose. The child. And the child? Legend has it the child lived, a girl, And legend has it she was carried far from that place and raised somewhere else, under some other name, knowing nothing of the man whose blood ran in her, nothing of the piano, nothing of the hands, nothing of the price that had already been paid before she ever drew her first breath. But they say, and this is the part where the old folks drop their voices low, they say that girl grew up humming a melody, one that nobody had ever taught her, one that would rise up out of her in the quiet, when she was rocking her own babies, when she was working somewhere alone. A tune with no words to it that she could not, for the life of her, explain. She thought she had made it up herself. She had not. It had come down to her through her own blood, from a grandmother she never met, through a father she never knew, past the chains and the blade and all the long years between, the one and only thing they had never managed to cut off, or sell away, or lock behind any door. Her name, the ones who keep the story say, was Sharia, and she carried him inside her, and never once knew it, and passed him on anyway. So that is the story of the slave who got caught playing the master's piano. They took his freedom. They took his hands. They took his name so completely that we can't even be sure, all these years down the road, that it was ever Isaiah at all. But they could not take the song, because a melody made from that deep a place, a melody a mother hums into her child in the dark, a melody a man refuses to stop playing even after they have taken the very hands to play it with. A sound like that does not end when the room goes quiet. It goes out into the world, and it keeps on going. It sinks into the air. It becomes part of the eternal. And they say, if you ever find yourself in that part of the country, on a still night, when everything else has finally gone quiet, they say if you listen close, under the wind, under the trees, you can still hear it, the mother's melody, played soft, played free. He is still playing. He was never allowed to touch it. One day he sat down and played it anyway, in broad daylight, in the master's own house. What the master did next was the first thing nobody saw coming. This is the story of Isaiah, born with his mother's melody inside him, too gifted and too proud to stay in the place the world built for him. A story about a rare gift, a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and the one thing they could never cut away. Listen all the way to the end. And on a quiet night, listen close. Some say you can still hear him playing.